Hey, what's up? Brandon from CustomSpeakerPods.com. Today we're going to go over how to set the gains on your amplifier for your mid-range speakers. A lot of people talk about setting gains for subwoofers and stuff. Today we're going to focus on mids. We're going to focus on your door speakers. So, right now today I'm using my benchtop setup. I've got a DMX 125BT head unit from Kenwood. I've got a DS18G 1800.4 amplifier, as well as my cell phone, which is hooked up to Bluetooth to the head unit. And on the cell phone, I have an app called Frequency Generator. And what I'm going to use this for is to generate a frequency to set the gains. I also have a multimeter here. This multimeter actually has a function to give a graph, which is very helpful, an oscilloscope. If you don't have a multimeter with an oscilloscope function, even though they're only like $35, a regular multimeter is doable. It's just not as easy to see. So, first step is to connect your head unit to your phone. Also, get the RCA out. Since we're hooking up an amplifier, we're going to measure the RCA output voltage to determine the clip point of the head unit. So, first thing is I have my multimeter hooked up, for simplicity's sake, hooked up to the RCA output of the head unit in the back. I am measuring AC voltage, alternating current, because that's what speaker output is. Speaker sound is alternating current going through the wires, making the speaker move back and forth. So, now to test the clip point of the RCAs, which is the first step to do, is to turn your function or your frequency generator on. Set it to 1,000 hertz. It's my preferred tone. Then, watching your multimeter, turn the volume up. We know that this head unit has a output voltage for the preamp RCAs of 2 volts. So we will attempt to see 2 volts coming out of this. So, continue turning the volume up on the head unit, keeping an eye on your voltage. And if this head unit clipped at any volume, you would see the voltage stop climbing. However, this head unit, at every volume, the voltage continues to climb. So at max volume of 40 on this head unit, we still see that the volume, or the voltage, even though it is not a true 2 volts, which is unfortunate, continued to climb all the way up to the max volume. Now, turning the oscilloscope function on, we can then see our 1,000 hertz waveform showing up. Notice as I turn the volume down, the waveform gets smaller because the voltage is decreasing. But if this head unit showed any clipping at any point as I turned the volume up, this nice smooth waveform would have a flat top on it. But since this does not have such things happening, we can assume that this head unit does not clip all the way up to the maximum volume, which is pretty nice. So, next step, now that we have determined we can turn the volume all the way up, we can set our amplifier output. And let's do that now. So, now we're going to set the amplifier up. The first thing we did was we tested the output voltage of our RCAs to determine the clip point of the head unit. We have determined that we can turn the volume all the way up to 40 on this head unit without any clipping. So, now to set the amplifier up. So what we have here is the G1800.4 from DS18. It's a very good test amp simply because it's very plentiful and it matches a lot of the setup of a bunch of different amps. So we are using channels 1 and 2 on this amplifier. RCA cables are plugged into 1 and 2. The settings on the amplifier, we have crossover, switch, we have our gain setting, and our different high pass and low pass frequency crossover settings. For now, what we're going to do is we're going to turn our crossover to the full pass. It's going to send every frequency signal out, as well as hook our multimeter leads to channel 1 of this amplifier output. With our gains turned all the way down on the amplifier, and our screwdriver in our pocket, we will begin our frequency of 1,000 hertz on our cell phone and begin to turn the volume up. So since we are only focusing on this amplifier, for example, if this setup was in your car, the amplifier would be powered up, your head unit would be on. That means that your remote wire is activated, which is what this switch on this setup does. Now the amplifier is active because it is plugged in. We have our status light on, and we are seeing a very small wave come through right now. So as we turn the volume up, not going to see anything change because the gain on the amplifier is turned all the way down. Now it is also a good idea to make sure that you don't have any music playing in the background, because that'll mess up your settings. Alright, so since we're focusing on this amplifier, there's nothing else hooked up except this one amplifier in our vehicle. Power is on, amplifier is on. We're going to turn the volume all the way up to the clip point of the head unit, and in this case the clip point is all the way up to 40. So, to our multimeter, we're going to try to get that nice looking waveform again. Right there. Now you notice that it is reading 2.7 volts AC. And as we turn this knob a little bit, the gain, as we turn the gain up, we're going to see that change. Now, there are ways we can set all of this without an oscilloscope. You can use the root mean square method, which is calculating a bunch of stuff. Ohm's laws tell us that power equals voltage squared divided by resistance. Specifications on this amplifier state that it has 150 watt output at 4 ohms and 230 watts at 2 ohms. So, using those and the Ohm's law calculation, we can determine that at 150 watts at 4 ohms, we should be getting 24.5 volts out. Let's test it. So we turn the gain up, and we adjust our range here a little bit. So we see 17 volts, 19, you see at 21, it starts clipping, and that's a perfect example of a clipped sine wave. See how it gets flat at the top? So we're going to turn the gain down until it doesn't clip anymore. Right there. So it's showing about 20 volts. So 20 volts is about 100, I don't know, I'm not going to math that. So if we wanted to get all the power out of this amplifier, we would set it at 19.5 volts. That would give us a clean signal without any clipping. 19.5 volts over 4 ohms. So we would do the calculation, 19.5 squared, and then divide that by 4. So that would give us 95 watts, not 150. But I digress. So we are going to be hooking up the speaker setup we have for the Nissan Altima, which is a dual 6, dual 2 setup. The speakers inside those pods are the DD Audio VO M6.5B. They have an RMS rating of 100 watts per speaker. So, by putting them in parallel, the speakers share the output of the amplifier, so 100 and 100, combine that together would give you 200 watts that we can safely send to those two speakers in parallel. Now, calculating the voltage output, what we need to measure in order to set the gains properly to protect the speakers, since that amplifier states in the spec sheet that it can do 230 watts at 2 ohms, that would be an output voltage of 21.4 volts. But we know that this amplifier can only put out 19.5 volts before it clips. So that means we are safe, because a 200 watt at 2 ohm would be 20 volts. If this amplifier was more powerful, which is fine, as long as you set the gains correctly, you don't have to worry about blowing up your speakers. If it was more powerful, we would turn the gains down to the appropriate level in order to match the speakers. So that means you can take a 4-channel amplifier and you can run some really heavy speakers and some really light speakers. We'll do that in another video. We'll run tweeters and mids off the same amplifier. Pretty cool. So I guess that's it. We tested the gains on the head unit, we tested the clip point on the head unit. We hooked up the amplifier, found the clip point of the amplifier, set it to the clip point. Now we're just ready to hook up the speakers. So once you've done all that and you've set your voltage to where you want it, we can then hook up speakers and start playing music. 19.8. Good enough. Don't forget to turn your volume down. Don't mute it. Turn it down, because you don't want to hook everything up and blow your ears out. Alright, back. We got speakers hooked up, ready to go. We got it going through. Right now we're going to run it off of head unit power. See what that sounds like. Then we'll hook it up to the amp. Bluetooth through my phone, YouTube music. Go. Now, turn it down. Be very mad. Amplifier. You hear the head unit again? Running off the head unit, this brings up an interesting point. If you're going to run a 2 ohm load, which is what wiring these speakers in parallel, even though it's going through the crossover, does, some head units might not like that. For example, this head unit right here didn't mind it until the volume got really loud and it started drawing a lot of power. Then it gets upset. That's why it was clipping. So keep that in mind. Some stereos can handle the 2 ohm, some stereos can't. So, when in doubt, amp it out.